Hey everybody, it's Erin here. I'm going to unmute all of you so that you can say hello if you like. There we go, everybody's unmuted, I think. Wait a second. There we go. Sorry, it's not letting me do that, but.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted now.
There we go.
I'm also unmuted.
There we go. Hi, Michelle. Who was that spoke first? That was Stuart. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Excellent.
Of course, since I'm not just hosting today, I'm presenting, I'm having some technical difficulties. So my audio didn't work and we had to reboot, and now I'm trying to get my webinar, my presentation open, and the drive is not accessible. So I'm just going to download it from my email that I sent to myself earlier as a backup plan.
No problem. Don't sweat. Take your time.
Yep, we're good. So folks, you are unmuted, and that's so that you can participate in discussions and things. And we will ask at times when I'm speaking, probably if everybody just to mute themselves unless we're having a discussion, just so we don't get the background noise. But that's
Yeah, if you have any ongoing construction or dog fights.
exactly. Exactly. Great. And in a moment, you'll see my screen. I did my PowerPoint here. And we do have a few more people planning to join us.
Great.
So we had 13 registrations, but I know some of those are not actually going to attend live. They just registered so they can get the recording tomorrow.
I don't know if you saw, I don't know whether you saw Glenn's response this morning saying he can't make it. But I imagine he's already registered, but he won't be here in person, so he'll still get the recording.
Same with Dylan, also registered but can't attend in person. Paul and Michelle sent regrets as well.
And Fred also won't be here in person.
Right.
Good.
Good.
But I can't see on here who do we have?
So we've got.
I heard Michelle.
Yeah, Dan Black,
Yeah,
Heather,
still here.
Ryan. And folks, you can, for those who just arrived, you can unmute yourselves so that you can say hello. And I'm actually going to promote Stuart to panelist because he's, I'm going to give him one extra job while we're doing this.
Do I get more money?
Ahead of time, get more money.
I've always wanted a promotion.
Yes. Yeah, you get more volunteer compensation.
Great.
Yeah, actually, it's not letting me promote you. I don't know why, but.
That's okay. I can still talk.
Yeah. So Stuart, the one thing I'm going to ask you to do is when I'm running some polls today, I won't be able to see the results on the screen. So I'll just ask you to read them out so that I know what the results are so I can chat about them with folks. And I'll let you know when I want you to do that.
I have an open screen here to do that. So perfect.
All right, everybody. It is top of the hour, I believe. Yeah.
1 minute after noon here in Atlantic, Canada.
Excellent. So Stuart, anything you want to say before I jump in with some introductions and explanations and things?
Not really, just a short and sweet hello. Thank you folks for joining us for this second now PD webinar for instructors. And I think, you know, we want everyone to actively participate and give honest feedback at the end and let us know whether these things are working and working in your favor, whether you're benefiting from it. If you want to say anything different or different subjects or different ways of doing things, please reach out to Aaron and/or myself, and we can try to make that happen. I don't want to take your time away, Aaron. I'll say some things at the end.
Yeah, I'm leaving time at the end for some last wrap-up stuff for the season, and then looking at our schedule and all those things.
Perfect.
Great. Thank you, Stuart. Okay, so folks, you are able to speak on this webinar. So those of you who came in a little bit later, I'm just going to invite you in a moment to unmute yourselves. There's a little microphone beside your name in the attendee list, or on your little dock on the left-hand side of the webinar dock. And it's orange right now, and if you unmute yourself, it'll turn green. So I'll invite you just to say hello in a moment. If you would prefer not to use your audio, that's fine. There's a chat function as well at the bottom of your dock, and you can just type in a hello there, and that's how I'll know that you're going to participate by chat instead of audio. So I'll make sure that I look there when we're having a discussion. I'll look in the chat window as well. So yeah, if you can just either unmute or say hello in chat. Either way, I just like to give people a chance to test their audio and make sure that it's working before we actually jump into a discussion. So Michelle.
Good morning from Vancouver.
Hi. And it looks like Sherry's here with us.
Yeah, I'm here.
Excellent.
And Cameron's here.
Hi, Cameron.
Hi there.
Who else have we got? Tammy. Tammy's on the phone, it looks like, so maybe we'll say hello later. Dan Black.
Hi, it's Dan.
Hi, Dan. And Kim Keating's got her hand up. And Heather Moon is here as well. So folks, if you're having any technical difficulties at all, Rick Condon is on with us. I'm going to invite him to say hi as well.
Hello, everyone.
If you have having any technical difficulties either with your audio or finding things on the dock, you can type in a message in the questions chat area on your dock, and Rick will respond to that. Tammy's said good morning via the chat, so she's coming in by chat. Okay, so there's a couple of points in the webinar where I'm going to run some polls, and then a couple of points as well where I'll be opening up for discussion. I'll either have a discussion question for you, or at the end we'll have just an open Q&A as well. So for either of those points, if you want to unmute yourselves, feel free, and you can participate verbally like that, or if you prefer, you can type in any questions or responses to my questions into the question chat area at the bottom. So since we're a small group and we're all colleagues, this is going to be a little more informal than if you've sat in on any of our CSSE webinars. That's a bit more formal, but we're going to be quite informal today. And anytime you want to say something, please jump in. If you put a question in chat and I miss it because I'm kind of watching that and presenting at the same time, feel free to unmute yourself if it's a question that needs to be addressed right away. I don't mind being interrupted. We are going to start with a couple of polls. So I'm going to ask Stuart to make sure he's unmuted because I'm presenting today.
I'm unmuted, I believe.
Yeah. Great. Because I'm presenting today, I launched the polls, but I can't see the results. So I'm going to launch one for you here. And you should see that on your screen. Stuart, are you seeing that?
Yes, I'm seeing it.
Great. So I'm asking a question here as an instructor. What methods have you used in your teaching? So I'm just getting a sense here of how many of you have led webinars or used video or audio conference in your teaching or taught a full online course, or perhaps none of the above. So just a quick question for you. Stuart, you can probably see some responses coming. I can see the responses coming in. Great. So I can see when people have voted, about a third of you so far.
No, I can't see
I can see that
polls.
part. I can see
Okay,
that.
good.
Once I see once I launch the results, you'll see that.
I was going to try to wake everybody up, but I guess I don't have to.
There we go. 2/3 have voted. So get your mouse clickers going. I'll give you a couple more seconds to vote on that. And I'm going to close it. So click fast if you want to participate.
Do you want me to click too or no?
Sure, everybody can. So there's the results.
Okay.
There you go.
Oh, that's good. Pretty even.
Is it all pretty even?
I got 17%, 17%, 17%, 17%, 33%.
Oh, okay, great.
None of the above.
Yeah, so it looks like we've got a little bit of smattering of experience across the different modes there. I'm going to do one more poll for you here. and ask you which of these methods, the same methods you've used as either a learner or a worker. So we use these technologies not just in our teaching, but maybe we've taken a webinar as a learner, or you've used video conference as part of your work. So let's just see what responses are to that one.
There doesn't appear to be an option to select more than one.
Nope,
Oh.
that's true. I should have made that an option. My apologies. I got the type of poll wrong. So I'll invite responses by audio as well once the poll is closed.
Well, for this one, I would answer all of the above.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. If anybody is all of the above, just chime in on your audio if you wish, or in the chat and let me know.
I'm on all of the above.
Okay, great.
Yeah, me as well.
Excellent. So it's quite a few of you that have used the various technologies. Sorry about that with the choices. So I'm gonna close this poll now because I know that it was a bit limited. You couldn't click as many as you wanted. So actually, I'm seeing the results here now. 75% webinar, 25% have done an online course. Only half of you voted because most of you were saying actually you've done multiples. So that shows some of the limitations of the technology. You've got to be prepared with the right type of poll to do that well. So you should now be seeing my presentation screen, and I'm going to jump in to the first thing here, which is actually, I'm going to come out of the presentation screen, so you'll see me go into my PowerPoint, because I'm going to take some notes, and then I'll make sure that I put that up on the big screen so you can see that all as well. So the first question I have for you, and again, you can unmute yourselves and answer this verbally, or you can put your responses into the question chat, whichever you prefer. How would you define online education? Let's start with that one. How would you define online education? I just want to put some notes in here. So what do you think? So waiting for some people to respond by audio or in the chat. How would you define online education?
So my initial cut at that would be training that is delivered via display screen technology. And that may imply several options.
Great. Anything else, folks? How would you define online education? Go ahead.
Aaron, if I may, I would probably suggest it's flexible.
Right. Yeah, we can just do some characteristics as well. So flexible. I'm not hearing any other chime in, and I don't see anything in the questions and chat area. So perhaps this isn't working too well for folks. I'll give you another couple minutes. Cameron, you've got yourself unmuted there. Anything to add?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think that the fact that it's delivered via display screen technology is the main point to it. The other questions, you know, online training versus online education, I think that that's really just the definition of training versus education. I'm sure there's some people who have a better understanding of those two definitions, but I kind of view it as training where the information is going from one person to another, and education where maybe you're getting a little bit more back and forth. And I also see there's a bunch of limitations with online education versus, say, a classroom training. So we've talked about the flexibility, which is great, but the downside is, especially if it's been a pre-recorded online training, is that you don't get the interaction.
Great. Anything else people would like to add about the difference between online training and online education, or characteristics of either before I move on?
I rather like eye contact, and being able to sometimes even assess through eye contact if people understand, are they getting it, or are there questions in their minds, and that's why then you miss some of that. Well, you miss a lot of that with online training.
That's true. So I'm just going to show you the notes here. So we've got some flexibility, but also limitations in online education. Training specified as being more kind of transmission of information, whereas education is more back and forth. I'm going to do one more question for you here, and that's just to think about our CSSE courses. What are some characteristics of our CSSE courses? And again, you can do this by audio or type it into the chat if you'd rather. What are some characteristics of of our CSSE courses, and what is their value? I'm watching the chat if you want to type there.
Well, it's Cameron here. So I think the value of the CSSE courses, the classroom-based courses, is, it's more than just training. I think there is a real interaction between the student and the instructor. And I think the other side of it is the network building that you have when you go to a class and you're working through the problems with other students.
Right. Characteristics of our CSSE courses and value.
Specifically speaking to the CHSE program, it also builds awareness about soft skills.
I think I've got something here too. Student-student interaction. Instructor-student and student-student interaction has been coming in. That's in the question area. You'll see that my typing is not at executive levels. Interaction, again, lots of people saying interaction in the chat. So, okay, great. So I'd just like you to keep those things in mind. I invite you now to mute yourself again if you have not, and I'm going to move into some content now. All right, so the first thing we're going to look at is just, I know we've used the term LMS quite a lot already in various meetings and things, and I think everybody probably knows what that is, but I just wanted to go over a few things about what an LMS is and what it does. So an LMS is used for managing courses, distributing course materials, allowing collaboration between participants and instructors. It's also used for things like registration, assignment submission, grades, communications, analytics, and reporting. So an LMS itself does a whole lot of things. Part of an LMS is the virtual classroom. So this is the elements that we use to actually do teaching and learning, the virtual classroom. And we've used the terms synchronous and asynchronous before. There's a couple of definitions up on the screen there for you. And some examples of that: asynchronous, things like self-paced contents, which could be anything from video to text-based content. Also, discussion forums are asynchronous, where you can have a discussion in text with people over the period of a week or whatever, and people log in and add their comments at any particular time. Email communications is a type of asynchronous communication we use regularly that also can be built into an online course. So the benefits of this are reflected in some of the things you said earlier, not time-based, and can take as much time as needed and according to your own schedule. So people can do asynchronous work at any time, and they can take as long as they need to do it as well. They don't need to do it in a particular window. But some challenges is that it needs more self-direction, and students doing asynchronous types of learning can feel more isolated. Some examples of synchronous tools for teaching and learning: online chat. So that is where it's actually happening live, and people are in a chat room together. That can be text-based, but you can also do video conferencing live, including things like whiteboard and screen sharing like we're doing today. Instant messaging is another synchronous tool. Some benefits of synchronous are that it avoids those feelings of isolation. It can be used for collaboration, but the drawbacks are that, of course, it's not as flexible because it's time-based, so people need to be there at a particular time. So just using your chat window now, and you can open it up for audio if you like as well. It says at the bottom of the screen here, e-learning should include both. So why do you think e-learning should include both types, asynchronous and synchronous options? can respond to that either by audio or in the chat. What's the benefit of including both in e-learning? To provide flexibility and to attain training, says Michelle. Someone's on audio if you want to jump in.
Sure, it's Cameron. I can see that it really depends on the material that you're presenting and how you plan on presenting it. I can see e-learning that is asynchronous and some that is synchronous. And I guess I can see the possibility of doing both. But I don't know if I would say that they should always include both.
I think it's a really good point. You align your techniques with your content you're delivering, what the purpose you're trying to achieve. Any other last thoughts? Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. And yeah, I think that's the key, is that it's the material and how the material needs to be presented that really drives what kind of presentation you're going to have via online course or a classroom course, or maybe even sending somebody a memo.
Right. Great, thank you. I don't see anything else coming in via the chat or any other people unmuted, so I'm going to move on to the next slide then. Thank you. So community of inquiry is a concept that comes up a lot when talking about online education. And this particular writer talks about social presence, teaching presence, and cognitive presence, but those terms are used fairly commonly. What that means is social presence is students establishing themselves in the online environment, students feeling they can be authentic, and involves personal and professional sharing. Teaching presence are things like instructors facilitating conversation connections, activities that facilitate collaboration, interaction, and reflection. And cognitive presence is the instructors facilitating the learning, so students can question, critique, and reflect with peers. Just a comment here on my sources for this webinar. So I did a lot of looking into both current academic research, but also industry, e-learning industry training, and a couple of training articles specifically, so to balance out the education versus training, and including one article that Fred had sent me some time ago that I've looked at for this, and you'll see all of those in the references at the end of the webinar. So there are differences, of course, between a lot of the material is about education, and it's talking about higher education, so we need to be careful thinking about how we bring that into our particular type of learning that we're doing with our CSSC courses. I'm just noticing that I think there's a question here. I'm going to take a quick look and see if that's something that... Great, okay. Sorry, I'm going to get a little distracted by trying to monitor questions at the same time, which I'll stop doing and I'll come back to those later. So 4 strategies for building community online. We're going to look at some examples here. Students feel more connected when instructors take an active role in facilitating discussions. So the same as in a face-to-face classroom, that instructor-led component is really important in online training. Discussion-based strategies in online courses can reduce anxiety and increase participation. So some students may have anxiety in a face-to-face classroom because of their past experiences with learning. When online, when people aren't used to the technology, those anxieties can be different or expanded as well. So having that instructor-led and discussion-based strategies where there's a student-instructor and student-teacher or student-student interaction can reduce that anxiety and increase participation. So let's look at some specific examples of these 4 types of strategies that have been identified. So reaching out early and often, that can be starting with a welcome email where you introduce yourself, both professionally and personally, talk about what to expect in the course, what's expected of the learners, what they can expect of you, and then continuing on through the course with weekly messages that can be things like recaps of the content, announcements, reminders of what's coming up, deadlines, those kinds of things. That second strategy in online courses is important. So limiting lecture time and increasing discussion. Lecture is done differently on online. So you can do synchronous lecture time in a video conference, but you can also do a lot of self-paced content, video self-paced or reading self-paced. so that when you come together, that discussion is fuller because people have done the learning ahead of time. So the 2-day course that we usually do is spread out over a few weeks instead, and people during each module have time to do the self-paced learning, but then come together to do the in-depth discussion, application of what they're learning, the activities that would normally be done in a face-to-face course. But the lecturing is often replaced by self-paced content. Doesn't have to always be, but it can be. Strategy 3 is using multiple features. So we've mentioned a range of different tools that can be used for online teaching and learning, and having some variety in a course is really important, both to balance the synchronous and asynchronous if you decide to use both, but also to use, even within those types, use different types of tools. So asynchronous discussions might be held in a discussion forum. There might be some things that you want to do by email to keep it more private. You can use a live chat room or a live webinar. So we could actually have embedded in a course a 1-hour webinar where there'd be some content presented, some discussion or activities or Q&A that could be done as an office hour as well. And then finally, it's the 4th strategy, using class time to share personal and professional updates. So in our face-to-face classes, this happens a lot in the breaks and at the lunch hour and after hours if people have traveled to the course and they're available in the evenings. So that needs to be built into the online courses in a more intentional way, to have informal social discussion, to build in a space for that and let it happen organically. So I have a poll here before I forget that one. So I've got another poll for you. And I'm going to launch that right now. So as a CSSE instructor, where do you currently spend most of your time when you're teaching a course for CSSE? Do you spend most of your time in preparation, facilitating, lecturing, marking, travel, because our courses of course involve getting to and from the course location? So if you wouldn't mind just quickly participating in that poll. And Stuart, I am actually seeing the results here, so I won't need you to read those for me. You can stay muted. We got a few people coming in here. Half of you voted. So it's just where you spend most of your time. I did this one intentionally, one answer only, because I'm just trying to get a sense of where the bulk of your time goes. And I'm going to close that in a minute. So if you haven't voted and would like to, click right now.
I accidentally hit something there, so I might throw your.
It's not
your
it's not a okay, I'm going to
the facilitating might be higher than it should be.
Yeah. All right. So for those of you who voted, 60% of your time, 60% of you said that most of your time spent in lecturing or content delivery. 40% said facilitating or learning activities. So about what I expected. But I think for some of the courses, depending on how far you have to travel time could be important as well. And here's the last poll for this webinar. Oops, I'm going to close that one because actually I'm not supposed to go to that one yet. I'm going to give you a bit more content and then we'll go to that one. All right, so 5 different roles. This is a research paper on that looked at faculty who've won awards for their teaching online. So this is what award-winning faculty find are the most important roles that they take on. And of course, this will vary course to course and depending on the type of course being offered. Our CSSE courses, they are training courses. They are safety training courses, but they're not fall training. They are, as one of you mentioned, there's soft skills involved. There's analytical, critical thinking skills. It's conceptual things as well as very practical things you can apply to your workplace. So there will be variations both in the content and also how we want to create and design our courses. But here is some ways to think about the roles of instructors. So these writers quoted one other researcher who found that online instructor roles require a paradigm shift regarding instructional time and space, virtual management techniques, and the ability to engage students in virtual communication. So that shift from teaching online, teaching in person to teaching online is a paradigm shift in how you teach. And just to let you know, you'll get a copy of the recording tomorrow, and also the slide deck with both the slides and my notes in it. So don't worry about trying to capture all these. You will get access to the whole deck, including notes tomorrow. So here's some elements of the facilitator role when teaching online. As we mentioned, a welcome email, that could be a welcome video as well. The kinds of activities that we do in the classroom to help learners get to know each other and to get engaged with the course content, we add to that online by helping students to become comfortable with technology, particularly in the first courses that we offer when we have people doing this for the first time. There's some things you'll see that are familiar there in terms of the different types of assessment and offering feedback. And also then there's modeling for students what it means to participate online. So an online instructor is very engaged throughout the online course in participating in discussions and kind of setting the tone for things and showing students how to participate and what's expected. There can be course designer elements, just as there are with your in-person courses, establishing the learning objectives, aligning course content and course delivery, as Cameron mentioned earlier. That's a big part of the design of an online course, is making sure that the content delivery matches what your intent is and what the type of content is. Course manager is another role. So from providing the content to doing the logistics of grading assignments. Something that's added in an online course that you may not do as much of in person is encouraging students who are not attending. And we'll talk a little bit later about attrition in online courses, but it is important for the instructor to check in with students who are not there and find out what's going on, what's preventing them from participating, and to remind them of what's expected of them. Reflecting on course design, as you do in your in-person classes, what's working, what's not working, what needs to be tweaked for the next time. That's part of the course manager role. And subject matter expert. So the same online as it would be in person, staying abreast of your content, continuing to develop your own expertise. And mentoring. So part of, you often probably get questions from students informally at breaks and afterwards about career directions, what course to take next. That's part of teaching online as well, and that may happen in email. It may happen in, if you decide to have some kind of office hour where once a week you're available for an hour for folks to text you within the online platform, or even meet in a chat room. There are a number of different ways that mentoring can happen. So now I'm going to do that last poll. Oh, of course, my technology expertise failed me. So I was going to ask you, and I can't because I accidentally launched it early and then had to close it, and it's not letting me launch it again. So with those 5 roles, facilitator, course designer, course manager, subject matter expert, and mentor, in your chat, maybe in your chat window, the question area, just type in which one you think would be the most time consuming in an online course of those 5 roles. So mentor, facilitator, course designer, course manager, and subject matter expert. I'll type those all into the window for you so you can see them.
Or maybe you can go back to that slide that has the 5 of them listed.
Sure, that's a good idea. There we go. So just type in the chat window or your question area, which one do you think you would spend the most time on in an online environment?
Most time or most important, or both?
Both. You can tell me in the chat window which one you think is both, or if you prefer to use your audio, you can just go ahead and unmute and jump in.
Okay, thank you.
Facilitator for myself.
Yeah, and Ryan says facilitator is the most time. Cameron said mentor. Tammy said course designer takes the most time. Just going to give a couple more seconds for folks to add anything they want to add. And they're all important, Ryan says as well. So yes, that's very true. They're all important, and how much time you spend on each of them will vary, of course. It won't always be the same per course. Dan says content manager, then mentor, then facilitator, then course designer. And that's very true that, subject matter expert was first there for Dan. So he kind of ranked them for us. So it can vary course to course, depending on what the goals of the course are. And also depending on supports that are happening. So content designer may actually be done by an instructional designer, and the instructor would be have limited involvement there, just to set the objectives and outcomes and make sure that the design aligns with those. Content management, content manager role is definitely more significant in online courses than it is in face-to-face courses, and that's partly because keeping track of students and when they're not participating and checking in with them. There's more to do in that area online than there is in an in-person course, where you might just need to remind people of that they can't miss more than 2 hours if they're stepping out to take a lot of phone calls or things. So thank you for jumping into that one. So given that those are the types of roles that instructors have, what kinds of competencies do instructors need to teach online then? Well, one area of competency is technical skills, and that involves knowing how to use the LMS. So learning your way around the learning management system, all the tools that are involved, and whichever ones are going to be used for your particular course. And then competency with things like email, PDFs, uploading, searches, all the kinds of technical competencies we use in our work life that become really important in an online course as well. Willingness to learn, so not just learning the new technologies, but new teaching techniques that make use of those technologies and use them well, and knowing when they're appropriate to use and when they're most effective. We already think about how our students learn. We already all have knowledge of how people learn, and then in particular now we need to know how people learn online, because that type of learning is different. And your content expertise continues to be a competency. So some buzzwords. We all love these kind of buzzwords that are very nebulously defined, but used a lot. And interactivity and engagement are two that are used a lot in online education, online training. And it's difficult, even with the sources that I use for this webinar, there's a lot of variation in how these terms are used. So I'm just going to tell you now how I tend to use them and the way that I've tried to use them consistently through this. So for me, interactivity is about methods. So content to learner methods, learner to learner methods, learner to instructor methods. Engagement for me is about the results of those methods. So how involved is the learner with the content and with the learning community. So interactivity is about the methods used, and engagement is about the outcomes of that, how involved they are in the content and the learning community. And you probably catch me being inconsistent even in how those are used, just because of the materials that I'm using as well. So interactive techniques, here's some examples. Encouraging group collaboration is really important in online courses, and that can be done in a variety of ways. When I taught online, it was long enough ago that there wasn't a lot of synchronous or video being used in online courses. So we did all of our group presentations in text formats, in small groups, in discussion forums. And that takes time to set up and to teach people what's expected of them, but it actually works quite well. And now we have a lot more available to us. We can actually have live chats. We can do a webinar, and people could do a presentation as part of a webinar time together. So there's a lot happening that can happen if it works with your content and your goals for the course. Group activities, problem solving, group chats, text-based, audio, video, those are a variety of group collaboration that can be done. Branching scenarios, I think many of you probably have heard of this and maybe know more about it than I do, just because it's quite commonly used in training. It's a multi-stage type test or case study with choose your own adventure style, where the learners need to make decisions. Those decisions aren't necessarily right or wrong, but they lead to different outcomes. So the students are determining which direction they want the scenario to move, what kind of outcome they want to get to. And they may do critical thinking and analysis as part of those scenarios. And when they talk about interactivity online, sometimes designers are really talking about engagement with the content that's not passive. So even things like pressing a button, drag and drop operations, typing in words, anything that will allow the learner to actively participate in the process can be considered interactive. Now, I consider that interactive in a learner to content way, and that can be very superficial. So we need to make sure that our interaction becomes engagement in a more deep level as well. Gamify the experience, and we'll talk about this more on another slide, but just to give you a quick ideas here. Visible progress indicators, tailoring assistance to the learner's current experience, and dividing the learning process into small chunks would be considered gamifying their experience. And quizzes become quite important in online, so that we can check in and make sure that students are understanding the material, that they're doing the prep work for the discussions and the activities, because you won't see that the way you do in the classroom. So introducing real life problems that learners can solve using their newly acquired skills. You can use video and audio questions for quizzes, so it's not just all text-based. And then we move into looking at types of engagement. So one set of research built an online engagement framework, and they include these 5 types of engagement. Social engagement is things like building community, creating a sense of belonging, establishing trust. Cognitive engagement includes thinking critically, integrating ideas, justifying decisions, developing deep discipline understandings, and distributing expertise. So the instructor is a subject matter expert, but you know from your classroom that you can get a range of learners with a range of experience in their fields and related to the course content. So distributing that expertise with peer-to-peer learning is important online as well. Behavioral engagement includes things like identifying opportunities and challenges, developing agency in the online course, supporting and encouraging peers. So there's the things that we do in an online course. Collaborative engagement, learning with peers, relating to faculty members, and developing professional networks. And then emotional engagement, managing expectations, articulating assumptions, recognizing motivations, and committing to learning. And that emotional engagement, if people have frustrations with the technology, that can impact as well. Some strategies for these types of engagement. So for learner-to-learner interactions, things like discussion boards, chat sessions, blogs, wikis, group tasks, or peer assessment are important learner-to-learner for learner-to-learner engagement, and that can start with icebreakers and introductions and can develop into working collaboratively in small groups. So like they do in your face-to-face courses, they could work with a small group throughout the entire online course to develop those working relationships and build on a project together. Learner-to-instructor interaction includes use of multiple student-instructor communication channels. So the engagement there would range from the fairly superficial regular announcements and email reminders, making sure that grading rubrics are transparent and available to students, to more in-depth with instructors having conversations with students regarding deep content, integrating their content or applying it to their workplace situations. And learner-to-content interactions, instructional videos, interacting with multimedia, searching for information, and really focusing on those real-world projects and discussions with structured or guiding questions. This is something that came out quite strongly, is that learners in online settings do better when they have instructors guiding their conversations and setting some structure to them, like you do in the classroom, with either an activity or starting with a question for them to begin with, and then asking prompting questions or follow-up questions throughout that discussion, whether that's over the course of a week in a discussion forum asynchronously or during a chat or a live Q&A. So the instructor-led component is quite important. A bit more on gamification, that other buzzword. And there's a lot of information out there about this, and I'm just going to look at one particular example for a moment here, and that's the idea of scaffolding as related to learner competence. So the educational concept of scaffolding is the application of tailored support to move the learner from their current level of learning to the next. And gamification examples include things like visible indicators of progress. So that could be progress bars, levels, or badges or achievements to let the learner know how they're doing and to maintain motivation. It includes tailored assistance, so giving hints or clues exactly when the learner needs them. For example, a prompt after 3 incorrect attempts at a question, and then gradually removing the support, removing the prompts as the learner progresses to through the course, so they get fewer prompts the deeper they get into the course material. A few other types of ways to gamify content. One is collecting resources. This is something that's often done in games, particularly online games. And in a course, that could be providing interesting facts or concepts that learners can collect to win points of recognition. And they also then have a list of facts or terminology for the end of the course as well. Could also go more creative than that and create some kind of mystery for learners to have incomplete information or a mystery to solve and provide instructions on how to find the missing pieces. Or a narrative, create characters, avatars, and scenarios that learners can identify with. So we often in our courses use examples from your own experience. So we can give those examples an avatar and a name, and have the learners track those people and those examples through a course to see how using that character applies the content to their particular workplace. And if we have the resources, we could even create several, so they can choose, well, I'm working in this particular industry, so I'm going to follow this avatar through the course. And the examples are related to their particular industry then. A couple of things about content online. And I'm noticing that we're close to the time when I want to switch over to give Stuart some time here. So just a few more slides to go. So content and how that's presented and delivered in an online format does involve making sure we're not just using text, but we're using text in combination with other things that work well to engage the learner and increase learner retention. So we need to incorporate and modify text for online consumption. This is from an article called "To Read or Not to Read: Text in an Online World." And she says we choose our knowledge formats carefully and use these formats for what they're good for: video for demonstration, text for descriptive information, and for conceptual knowledge. And she recommends things like bullet points, chunking, highlighting, and headers to enhance reading and retention. And from a training article that I found, some best practices related to that. So looking at what's on the screen here, I'm just going to ask you once again to either via audio or via the chat and question window there, think about how these things, these best practices for content actually apply in your online setting, classroom setting, no, sorry, not online, your classroom setting as well. So how do these best practices apply in a classroom setting, not just online? How could you incorporate some of these into your classroom-based teaching? Feel free to unmute yourself and respond, or to type into the chat.
I would say using graphics is important, given the video aspect of the online training.
And then in your classroom, would you do that in your classroom as well? Or how could you use that particular practice in your classroom?
I'd be tempted to do it a little bit more interactive, maybe as a interactive session with whiteboards to capture the audience participation.
Great, thanks. Any other thoughts on how these best practices could relate to your face-to-face teaching as well? So Ryan says, describing graphics with audio, especially theoretical models, for instance, loss causation. So a combination of audio and graphic in the teaching. Any other thoughts on how you'd apply these in your classroom setting? Just giving people a little bit of time to type if they prefer. All right. So just a quick note from me on this. You'll note in my slide deck today, I've used icons on many of the slides, not all of them. And that is an attempt to have something visual that's related to the content that I'm presenting. And I haven't done this in a high level way. It's a very basic way. It's better to use things like charts and very meaningful content described visually as opposed to just in text. And I use a lot of text because I'm very text oriented, even though that I know that I should have more variety in my slides. But a lot of these best practices for content we can bring into our classroom by using them in our PowerPoint slides as well. And making sure that we're trying to incorporate less text and more visual representations of material. Also, one of the things that it says is don't put audio and identical text on the screen. And this applies to our classroom, in-person classrooms as well, because often we run into people who read the text that's on the screen. So people are seeing it and hearing it, and that's actually jarring. It doesn't help with the learning. Having an icon or an image on the screen and then you narrating your audio over that in the classroom, whether face-to-face or online, is more useful. So some things we can learn from this for our in-person class as well. So a couple more slides from me and then I'll hand over to Stuart. Learner accountability online is really important. Learner accountability when you're face-to-face, you can see when people are in the room, and as I think Stuart said earlier, you can see when people are engaged and when they're not quite getting it. It's easier to pick up on those things in person. Online, we have to find new ways of doing that. So module quizzes are important to see if people are not just doing the work, but understanding the work, and to be able to use that as a jumping off point to do some teaching or to make some corrections. In discussions as well, that's a way to test understanding and application to workplace. Summarizing, if you're having self-paced content during a module where people are either watching a video or doing some reading in advance, asking them in a small group to each summarize part of that self-paced learning can be a way of checking their understanding, but also making them accountable for doing that self-paced work in advance. And then group collaboration that involves peer-to-peer accountability as well. Isolation and attrition. There's a lot of research out there trying to understand why attrition is higher in online courses than it is in face-to-face courses. And some of the research is showing us that there's a few reasons why people leave online. It can be difficulty with technology. Either the technology is not working for them, or they don't understand how to use something and there's not enough training for them. It can be a lack of facilitation. So fully self-paced courses where there's no instructor involvement, there's higher attrition in those types of courses. So with our CSSE courses, I've been advocating all along that they be instructor-led and instructor-taught. How that looks is different than in a face-to-face course, but it still has that student-to-instructor interaction and the teaching component of the course. And then time, trying to fit that into their schedule. When you're doing an online course over several weeks, trying to build in time to do the learning, to attend anything live, can be challenging for some learners, particularly in our situation where a lot of our students, of course, are working full-time or more. They have family and other commitments as well. So how come some people persist and stay in the courses and don't necessarily feel isolated? Some of that is personal characteristics, autonomy, responsibility, self-directedness. Some of it's that they have online skills already, that they expect online learning to be less rigorous than it is, can be a deterrent when they find out that it's actually quite a bit of work. Time management, information management skills can be positive in helping people to persist online. And then course and program factors like the amount of technical support available, instructor support available, the types of materials and variety of materials, and interaction with other learners, how engaged they are with the content, with the instructor, and with their peers. And just leaving you with the last couple of quotes here. Engagement strategies are aimed at providing positive learner experiences and including active learning opportunities, such as participating in collaborative group work, having students facilitate presentations and discussions, sharing resources actively, creating course assignment with hands-on components, and integrating case studies and reflections. So basically, learners just want to know that somebody's there paying attention, and that is a part of the role of the instructor, and it's helpful to have the peer-to-peer and group-based learning to assist with that as well. So before I hand over to Stuart, are there any questions? I see one come in from Ryan here. What about self-discipline being a factor of why people leave? That is very true. Online learning does involve being able to plan out your week or your module, so you know when you're going to do the self-paced content, when you're going to start your project, when you're going to meet with your group to do any kind of group activity. That could involve scheduling as well. So self-discipline, you need to be somewhat organized, both with your time and with the information that you're using in order to do well in an online course. Any other questions? Feel free to unmute or type your question into the chat. How you doing, folks? Any last questions? I know it was a lot of information really quickly, and I had a couple of technical glitches there, but I hear somebody come online here. Anything to question or comment?
I just unmuted. Maybe that's what you heard, Aaron.
Yep.
But I thank you. Are there any other? Sorry, I don't want to talk over anyone. Are there any chat questions coming in for you? I'd like to thank you first of all for a lot of great information. We've all participated in courses, and classes or sessions online or in person, and from the good, the bad, the ugly, and this will help us all pay attention a bit more and to as far as what we are doing and how we're doing it, and to ensure that we are offering a good training experience for everyone. That's good. It's also a better experience for us, the instructor as well. Any final comments or questions for Aaron? I need about 2 or 3 minutes of your time, if you allow me to just first of all thank Aaron again. Good job. I know this it requires an awful lot of work to put these things together, and we saw that. We were looking at what takes us the most time, and sometimes it's facilitating, but if it's their very first time doing a course, it might be in preparation of materials. I certainly find that I tend to do a course. It's always a little bit different, and so I spend a lot of time in preparation. Probably too much time, more time than I'm paid for, but that's okay. So this is great. Again, thanks, Aaron. I just want to change over a little bit to look at our instructor liaison committee and our instructor teleconferences and PD offerings for next year. We have a draft schedule, and it rotates between subcommittee meetings to an instructor teleconference to an instructor PD webinar, such as we just went through, and that rotates throughout the year. And we are starting off after our summer break, September 4th, with a subcommittee meeting. So the subcommittee meeting, as you know, are those volunteers, such as myself. I have the honor of chairing this distinguished group of volunteers, and Paul Westcott, Kim Keating, Heather Moon, and we also have Sherry Lottie and Aaron Crisfield, as the latter two being CSSC staff. Support, and this wonderful support, and I want to thank all these folks for participating and offering their time and enthusiasm and their skills and expertise to this. So we will be starting off in September, going through looking at the year ahead and planning a little bit of a strategy. But we have October 2nd, we already know is going to be an instructor teleconference, and then in November a PD webinar, and then we'll rotate back to a subcommittee meeting in December, and so on and so on. We have this schedule as we always have had, or almost always have had, the first Wednesday of each month, right through the year, and except for July and August. So that schedule will be sent out to you. Aaron, may I ask you to do that and send it out to the subcommittee members and the instructors? That would be.
I'll send out the schedule in an email, and then I'll set up the calendar invites for the year as well, so that you can put them right into your calendar by accepting them.
That's perfect. We can get that in there. We want to maximize participation as much as possible, make it more meaningful for everyone. I've probably a broken record saying this, but these events are only as good. This interaction is only as good as, and it's a function of the number of people we have involved. And the more instructors, the better the outcome, I think, from these meetings. We also have, as a subcommittee, we put together some draft priorities, which I would like to get some comments on. Maybe not right now, but you can. But I'd like you to look at these and maybe ponder them and get back to us. The instructor feedback is really important. That these activities, the webinars and the teleconferences, meet your needs. So what we have looked at as far as draft priorities for next year are, engaging instructors all the more, and make sure that we're moving in the right direction and increase participation as much as possible. We want to continue to get your feedback on digital course materials, and touch base with all instructors at the Professional Development Conference this year in Winnipeg. Kim is going to be our host in the world, and we hope that as many instructors as possible will be at the PDC. And we have a time at our education breakfast, education committee breakfast during the conference, and hopefully we can get instructors there, meeting everyone, putting faces to names, interacting, sharing, all that good stuff. So I think this is, it's really important that we get to know each other as well as possible. So we at that agenda, we want to discuss the subcommittee, the teleconferences, and the PD model, how it works, and also get your input. We want to find out why people don't call in. I know people are always real busy, but is there something that we're doing wrong, or we could be doing better, that would encourage more people to participate? We will all be there. Well, many of us will be there from the subcommittee, and most of the instructors. So it's a good opportunity for us to discuss those things. We want to, so we have this, as part of this webinar, I'm going to present these draft priorities. I'm going to take this also to the Education Steering Committee so that they know what we are doing, what you are doing, and there'll be an opportunity for feedback from them as well. But I think that interaction is really important, that we share information back and forth. So that is kind of our direction for the next year. We need your help and feedback to make sure that it is right for you. So when I ask Aaron to send out the meeting dates, perhaps could we also include the subcommittee's priorities as well, so that's all shared and everybody knows exactly what we're doing, where we're going?
Yeah, I will do that.
Great. So I have exactly 1 o'clock, maybe it's 1:01. Are there any comments or questions before? Well, I'll go ahead and say this, and I just wish everyone a very safe, enjoyable summer. And I hope the rest of Canada is not getting as much rain as we've had so far in Atlantic Canada. But I guess it beats forest fires and other disasters. But stay safe, enjoy your families and loved ones, and have a great summer. And we will speak again at the PDC in Winnipeg, and certainly in October at our instructor teleconference. But before we go, are there any last comments or questions?
We just got a few thank yous coming in the chat. But yeah, folks, if you want to unmute yourselves and say farewell, you're welcome to do that, or say farewell in the chat. But thank you so much for taking the time to come today, and you will get a copy of the slide deck and the recording tomorrow.
Perfect. And thanks again, Aaron. Thank you all for participating.
Yes, Ryan, there will be an instructor. There will be a education breakfast at the PDC for instructors and the education committee and subcommittees.
Early Tuesday morning, likely.
Yeah, it will be the Tuesday morning. And that's the only question that came in, just folks saying goodbye in the chat. So Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Safe summer. Bye-bye.
Sorry, I was busy doing something else.
Oh, that's okay. People do that on webinars, you know, multitask, because I can't see you.
Okay, so I'm not sure how to hang up. Do I just X out or?
Yeah, yeah, X out, yeah.
Okay, good.
Okay, talk to you
Bye.
later. Bye.
Okay, bye. Hi. How are you?